Hey, it's Scott Petrak with another episode of the Brown Zone Coverage Podcast. Baker Mayfield announced he was leaving social media. The Browns lost a top front office executive to the Vikings, and the conference championships are Sunday. Here to discuss everything with me is Dave Chudowski of Go, the WKYC Morning News. Hey, Chud.
Hey, Scott. Good to be here. And just quick plug here for the morning show on Go. All this week, we've been taping some segments, not next week, but the week after. Austin Love and I are doing a Winter Olympic Showdown, 3 events. We did curling the other day. We're taping this on Friday. Today, we're doing a hockey shootout over at Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse. So it's pretty cool. We're each doing a story on a charity that's close to our heart, and then we're going to raise money for those charities and go head to head for bragging rights as well. So that will be not next week, but the week after. So we've been working on that. So been pretty busy, but definitely worth it. So, got to get that plug in there.
That's pretty cool. I think my wife said she went curling as a kid somewhere on the east side. I've never been, but I love watching it. Did you get any good at it? Like, could you figure it out?
Yeah, we did. Thanks to Ryan over at Mayfield Curling Club. He was out. Excuse me, got the frog here today. It was Mayfield Curling Club, and he was outstanding teaching Austin and I. And Austin and I went at it basically for 2 ends, and we didn't do any sweeping really. We just did the pushing the rock.
Yeah,
it was a blast, man. Yeah, you know what? I actually, we were able to do it a few times. Listen, we were definitely not mastering it, but it's going to be a pretty entertaining segment, I can tell you that. And I would definitely recommend anyone that wants to get out to go over to Mayfield Curling Club and check it out. It is as much fun, maybe more probably, I would say, to play than to watch it. Because I know a lot of people love to watch it, but definitely a lot that goes into it mentally and physically. My legs are still killing me from all the squatting, getting in that position. So I haven't done a lot of leg days lately. So that was definitely, there's a lot that goes into it. So good sportsmanship, and then beers afterwards. That's the key, man. Beers afterwards.
That's pretty fun. I'll tell you what, I get locked in during the Winter Olympics. Like, I mean, the matches, the Olympic matches take forever. Like, they take whatever, 2 or 3 hours, it feels like. And I can watch the whole thing. Like, I get locked in during the Olympics. So that's pretty cool that you got to do that. And maybe I'll have to try it after I watch the Olympics and get all excited for it.
Yeah, that's what happens. People do that. There's always a lot of interest in it after the Olympics.
Sure.
But, also tired of this snow, man. Oh my gosh. I'm tired of shoveling.
I know. I don't even have to do that much shoveling, but I got out there again this week. It's bad, man. It's bad just so my daughter can get out of the driveway and get to work. We're working from home. So my car's still got a bunch of snow on it because it sits in the driveway, but had to at least shovel one exit way out of the driveway. But I know it's bad. I guess it's going to warm up next week a little bit, so that'd be nice.
Well, on to what you were talking about before. Let's start with the GM, new GM for the Vikings, right? The Browns getting some draft picks and losing a front office member.
Yeah, we'll start with the draft picks. It's a new rule that it was November 2020 that it rewards organizations for developing minorities, whether it's in the front office or coach. If another team hires somebody away from your organization, a minority, the team gets 2 third-round compensatory draft picks, 1 in each of the next 2 years. So the Browns will get, and it's the compensatory picks. They come from this. They come from free agents that you lose. There's a whole complicated formula. So they're at the end of the 3rd round. So you're talking pick around 100, 105, something like that. But the Browns get one of those in this upcoming draft, and then again in 2023. But you also then lose, a key member of your front office, right? Kwesi Adofo-Mensah was vice president of football operations. He was Andrew Berry's top lieutenant. So the Browns will have to fill that void, whether it comes from internally, or externally, or whatever. A couple candidates internally. Maybe Glenn Cook, who's also had a couple interviews for GM. We know that Ryan Grigson, the former Colts GM, is on Andrew Berry's staff. Or they could go outside. but it's interesting. The guy's got a great background. He, got his bachelor's in economics from Ivy League. I'm pretty sure it's Princeton, and then worked on Wall Street for a while. Then got his master's in economics from Stanford. Thought about being a professor. Decided he wanted to go into sports and football. Got a job with the 49ers. Then the Browns hired him away a couple of years ago. We talked to him once. He's a Cleveland media corps, and he's really good to talk to. And then I watched his interview yesterday, his introductory news conference with the Minnesota media. And, just really a smart guy, obviously likable. People in Berea rave about this guy. So, sounds like a good hire for the Vikings. It's a loss for the Browns, but they're excited, right? Andrew Berry's excited. He said he's beyond excited that Kwesi was able to take this next step in his career. And then the Browns get a couple of draft picks. So maybe it's a win-win for everybody, but it's certainly newsworthy, that you lose one of your top football execs.
Yeah, good for him. Congratulations. And like you said, it says a lot for the Browns front office right now. So he moves on. So the other story is, and you say this all the time, that there's always something to talk about. We say that all the time. And this next comment I make is not a shot at Baker necessarily. I think this is a great move by him. Something probably should have done, before. I know he's done it before, or he's talked about doing it before, whatever. But the first reaction I have is I just think of all these great quarterbacks in the playoffs leading their teams to possible championship. Hey, he's going off social media.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and it's interesting, right? You had all these guys playing at a crazy level, and we'll touch on it a bit, but just the high level of play last week, especially in that Chiefs-Bills game. And and then Baker comes out this week and says he's leaving social media. It's interesting because, plenty of quarterbacks and plenty of NFL players are on social media, right? But it doesn't get them in quote unquote trouble, right? Tom Brady is all over Instagram. I check Instagram every morning when I wake up, and there's usually some kind of Instagram story from Tom Brady. But, it's related to the TB12 or whatever he's got going on, kind of from a business standpoint. And obviously he's out of the playoffs now, but even during the season, there's one or two a week. But it feels different, right? There doesn't feel anything controversial about it. There's nothing confrontational about it. And that's not the case a lot of times with Baker Mayfield. Just in the last couple of weeks, there's been examples of him going after members of the local media, and it happened again Sunday. And I didn't go after, but he reacted to a tweet by Dustin Fox of 92.3. And you just wonder, is there really a need for that? And maybe I'm too old, and Baker's 20 years younger than me, and maybe that's just what kids today do, but not everyone does, right? I don't see Patrick Mahomes having that kind of interaction on social media, or Josh Allen or Joe Burrow, right? So I don't think it is necessary. And I think it would be a good step if Baker actually listened, actually stuck to this and stayed off for a while, or at least had a change of practice in how he uses social media, and I think it was last week he tweeted, because he tweeted after the game Sunday, and then I think it was on late Tuesday night, he went on Instagram and said he was leaving social media. But he said it was toxic, and there's certainly a degree to that with social media, right? I mean, this is not breaking news. So it's just interesting because, does he bring a level of toxicity to it, right? And how he handles that? Does he just read the criticism? There's also a lot of love for Baker out there. But you're probably better off, they always say, hey, you don't read your press clippings. I think a lot of that goes for social media too, right? Just stay out of your mentions. If you need to promote something, if you have a good cause you want to put out there, whatever it is, I think there's a way to use it without, I guess, getting caught up in that toxicity or engaging with quote unquote the haters.
What did Dustin say on the tweet?
I think it was something to the effect of watching the quarterbacks this weekend show that the Browns don't have what they need in a quarterback. I'll look it up for sure. But, it was, you watch Mahomes and Josh Allen, And you think, if you're the Browns, is Baker Mayfield good enough, right? I mean, I don't think there's anything outlandish about that idea, right? And I would think if you're, I think I got asked this on the radio the other day, if you're watching those games and you're Andrew Berry, does it go through your head, man, we need to get so much better at that position? And I think that's um, I think that's natural to wonder that, because as a fan or as a writer, reporter, whatever, I think that goes through your head. Man, can you see Baker getting in this matchup, right? Can you see Baker going toe to toe with these guys? And it's tough to see that, right? I mean, it's tough to envision that. Not that he hasn't played at a high level at times, and not that he hasn't been in shootouts with Justin Herbert this year, but coming off the season that Baker played, it's a stretch, right? Especially when you talk a consistency level. Both those guys have either been MVP or considered, were in the running for MVP, right? I think Josh Allen was MVP runner-up in 2020. And Baker's just never played at that level for an entire season. So, if you're Andrew Berry and you're thinking about, okay, what do we need to do to get to this level, right? What do we need to do to get to the Super Bowl? And you watch his quarterback play, I think it's only natural to think, can my quarterback do that?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, absolutely. And you just look at the Bengals, and Joe Burrow alone has gotten them to the Final Four in the NFL. Not alone. I don't want to say, because, I mean, he's got a lot of talent around him. But that's the difference of, if you have an elite quarterback like Burrow as compared to, a handful of other guys in the NFL. That is, don't tell me Joe Burrow is not the reason that turned the tide. I mean, he just, like, you got to give Baker credit. He turned the tide around from 0-16 and 1-15 to at least a team that's competitive, right? So you got to give Baker his due on that. So there's that Baker did, but Burrow has taken it another step forward with the Bengals.
Oh, there's no doubt. I mean, they made other changes, right? They drafted Jamar Chase, and they signed Hendrickson, and they got better on defense. But for the jump that the Bengals made is because Joe Burrow's healthy this year, right? I mean, I think that's pretty clear. And you see that throughout the league, right? And you can win other ways. It's just way harder to do. And especially when you look across the AFC and you look at Burrow and Allen and Mahomes, I think it's only natural to compare that to Baker Mayfield, especially, and maybe this isn't Baker's fault, but he was a number 1 overall pick, right? So that comes with expectations. And, so Burrow was a number 1 pick. Mahomes and Allen weren't, right? They were top 10 picks. So it's natural and it makes sense. And to compare those guys, and you think, hey, can my quarterback do this? And can he do the same things? Can he make those throws? Can he escape pressure, right? And we saw that over and over in the Bills and Chiefs game. The fact that they could get out of trouble and still create plays. And yeah, you've seen Baker do that to some degree, but not the same way, right? It just looks and feels differently, or it looks and feels different. So yeah, so when Dustin tweets, do you folks see why what you have a quarterback just isn't good enough? That was a tweet. And that's a pointed tweet, right? It's not just like, hey, these quarterbacks are better than Baker. It's he's not good enough. But when you look at how Baker played in 2021, it's tough to argue with that.
Well, I'll tell you this. He's going to stay off social media. That's what he says. But the people around him need to as well, because it's hard for me to believe that, other things won't be pointed out to him. You know what I'm getting at? Yeah. People around him.
Yeah. Well, yeah. That's exactly right, Richard. And I'm even skeptical of, is he really off? Now, just if he doesn't tweet and doesn't post to Instagram, I guess that's a good step, or, first step in the right direction. But part of that would also be not reading everything, right? So, is he not looking through Twitter? Is he not on Instagram? Or is he just not posting, right? I think there's probably 2 levels to that. But it's interesting. But, I'm not faulting Baker for it, because I think it's a solid move. I think it's probably the right thing. He's got a really important offseason. He's got a long rehab in front of him from that shoulder surgery. And that's where his focus needs to be. And if he's going to be the guy, whether it's with the Browns or somebody else, if he's going to, salvage might be too strong a word, but let's say it, salvage his career after a really difficult season, he's going to need to be at the top of his game physically and mentally. And it probably helps not to be distracted or bothered by social media.
Last question on this before we get to the playoffs. You had mentioned it last week, that the hardest position in all of sport is quarterback, or most stressful. You made a comment along those lines, something. But, in the NFL, New York, obviously, with the media, Philadelphia, there's a lot of tough places with media. And, Cleveland's not as, difficult when it comes to the media for these guys as a lot of other cities. But I will ask you this. Where do you think the 1 through 32, where does the pressure of being the Browns quarterback fall in the NFL? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. And I think your premise is right about the media. Like, Philly is a different media. New York's a different media. I think there's a lot of focus on the Browns in Cleveland. And I think that speaks to what you're getting at. And that raises the pressure. If you look at some of the other cities, Jacksonville has like 2 people covering the Jaguars. Cincinnati has like 2 people covering the Bengals, or a handful. Now I'm sure it's more in the playoffs, but on a day-to-day basis, right? There's sites you can go to that aggregate all the NFL stories, and the Browns will have 20 or 30 stories every day from the media that cover the Browns, right? Including me. And you look at the Bengals and it'll be like 2 stories. Like it's a huge difference. So
wow.
While I don't think we are as harsh as some of the medias, media, plural for medium, like Philly and New York, like you mentioned, probably Boston, you can include in that. I would think that the media spotlight is almost nearly as sharp or as intense from the Cleveland media, just from volume and the fact that the fans are so passionate about their team. So yeah, when you talk pressure, I would put the New York teams higher. I'd probably put Boston higher. I would certainly put Philly higher, given just kind of feels like a more negative. I don't know, it's just more negative in Philly, right? That's just perception of their fans and of the media. But like, I'm not sure LA, I don't know if there's more pressure in LA, because I don't know if people in LA care that much about their teams.
Sure.
Right. So, off the top of my head, I might say top 5. I mean, Chicago's probably in there. Green Bay's a passionate market. But
top 10 for sure.
Yeah, top 10 for sure. Yeah, Dallas, right? Dallas is an intense market, given the Cowboys spotlight. But yeah, I would think top 10 is safe. I would.
Yeah. Wow, what a weekend last weekend. And I mean, it's Friday now, so it's been broken down, but obviously we're going to talk about it a little bit here. But I got to tell you, hey, went 6-0 in the first week, and there you go. I went 1-3. I think you went. Did you go 2-2 or 1-3?
1-3. Yeah, especially 1-3. And that's the thing, Sean. I don't, not to interrupt you, but you feel like if you get a game way wrong, it's okay. It's one thing. But then, like that Titans Bengals game, right? That last pick by Tannehill, the Titans might go win the game and they might cover, right? There's a big dropped interception that the Titans have. Obviously, that Packers game, before the block punt, it looks like they're going to cover, and they're going to barely cover, but they're going to cover, and then the game switches on a heartbeat, and then obviously that the Chiefs Bills game is a whole nother animal, right? But it felt like we were in all those games.
Even Tampa Bay, Tampa Bay comes back, and after Fournette scores that touchdown, I thought they were going to win. Yeah. I'm like, oh my gosh! I went from looking like an idiot picking Tampa Bay to thinking I was going to win it, and then bam, Cooper Kupp strikes. It's unbelievable that both the Chiefs and Rams were able to pull that off at the end, and those defenses let that happen. But you're right. I picked the Bengals game right. I'm sitting there looking pretty. I'm like, hey, I'm still rocking and rolling. I'm 1-0. And then the Packers are up. I think they're going to win and cover. I'm like, hey, I am rocking 2-0. And then bam, that punt changed my entire weekend. And I end up 1-3. And everyone who picked these games, it could have gone either way in all 4 games, right?
Exactly. Which obviously I love talking about it. And I like the idea of, who's going to win, picking who's going to win. But that's why I don't gamble a lot, right?
Yeah.
Not that I never have,
Yeah.
but that's why, because these games are razor thin margins that are flipped on one play, one call, one decision. And, not to sound preachy, but that's why you can't bet what you can't afford to lose, right? Because you could have
Yeah.
all the right information, all the right ideas, and it gets taken away from you by a block punt or what have you, right? All the examples that we could cite from last weekend.
Yeah. Well, I do. I think I told you I do this, fun bet with my buddy, and we divide up all the teams in the NFL, and the goal is to get, both teams in the Super Bowl, or if you each get one. Bottom line is you're trying to pick the winner, and it's amazing. 3 of the top 4 seeds are out, right? So Packers, Titans. I thought the Bills. Well, my prediction was Bills, Packers, and I think you were with me, so they're both gone. So much for that. I think the only regret I have, I stand by it. I feel pretty good about every decision I made. And like you said, I mean, it could go either way. Looking back at it, I wish I didn't say there was no way the 49ers would win.
Yeah.
I didn't think they'd win, but I forgot, I love Debo and that team. I should not have said that's my one regret, because you forget, man, Rodgers and the Packers choke a lot in the playoffs. And I forgot about that. And I forgot to just give the Niners more respect.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, to me, that would have been the game I bet the most money on, right? Or if I had to rank them,
right.
That would have been my biggest confidence pick, right? We probably said that last week. And then when the Packers score a touchdown on their first drive, you're thinking, all right, it's playing out like I thought. And then they couldn't do anything. And, I love Aaron Rodgers as quarterback. I have plenty of issues with all the crazy stuff he says. But I love him as a quarterback, and I always have. And I thought in the past that maybe got a little too much grief for not taking teams farther, right? It's not just the quarterback. They had that one game against, was it Seattle, where they blew the onside kick that cost him a shot at the Super Bowl, right? Like things outside of his control. The defense hasn't always been good. But this year, none of that was the case. I mean, the special teams let him down, but all they had to do is score one more touchdown, and that game's over. And they had about 55 minutes to do it, and they couldn't score the one extra touchdown. They had a block field goal, but that's on the quarterback to a high degree. And when I've been reading some stuff this week, looking at how the 49ers play defense, and Kurt Warner did a great breakdown of how the 49ers approached it defensively, but then some of the mistakes Rodgers made and some of the decisions, some of the bad decisions, like trying to force the ball into coverage or not seeing this check down or whatever it is. And there's a blatant example on the last play. He tries to throw the deep post route to Devontae Adams on 3rd and long on their last possession. And he's got, I forget which receiver it is, cutting wide open underneath on a deep crossing route. And he should have seen him. And he's wide open, and the guy might run long enough to set up a field goal right there. If not, they're close and they still have time to go ahead and, get in the field goal range for the winning field goal. And he just makes the wrong decision. He tries to force the ball into double coverage, and he's got this guy coming underneath. And there were more examples of that throughout the game. And is that the pressure of the moment? Is it when you get in a huge situation, do you just go to the guy that you trust the most, Devontae Adams or Aaron Jones, and kind of forget about going through your reads, right? And you wouldn't think that an MVP quarterback would do that, but that happens. And Kurt Warner pointed out examples of it. So you're right. Aaron Rodgers did not play at a high enough level in a big moment, and that stunned me. But it's probably something I should have kept in the back of my head when I was so confident that they were going to win.
Yeah, no doubt. And my Tampa Bay philosophy was I'm going to pick Brady until he loses, and now he lost. But boy, you don't tell me as you're watching that game, you're like, it's going to happen again. It's like it was unbelievable to watch the Rams melt down like that and allow him to have a chance.
Exactly. I mean, first of all, the patience that he shows, right, to be down 27-3, which obviously sends you right back to the 28-3 Super Bowl deficit to the Falcons. But the patience that he has, because there was plenty of stuff still going wrong, and he just kept scoring, right? Kept scoring. And then the number of huge mistakes that the Rams made, right? The fumble at the end of the first half when they're going in to score. Kupp's fumble. They get a fumble, and it looks like the game's over, right? I'm thinking, okay, the game's over. And then they snap the ball by Stafford's head, and that gives the Buccaneers another chance, right? Like all these huge mistakes that the Rams made, and yet they make the one play at the end because the Buccaneers get too aggressive with that one call. You know, we saw it with that call that allows Cooper Kupp to get down the seam against the safety, and Stafford makes a great throw, but it's still a bad defensive decision, right? The Rams have no timeouts, and we're in the final 30 seconds. And then you flip forward to the Chiefs-Bills game, and 13 seconds shouldn't have been enough time, period. And we could have the argument, should they have squib kicked? Should they have kicked, let them return a kick to burn time? Whatever. The fact is 13 seconds shouldn't be enough time. And the Bills just didn't play the coverage well enough. I know that they were worried about a deep touchdown, but you just can't let Tyreek Hill and then Travis Kelce run down the seam to pick up 20 yards apiece. Right?
It was unbelievable to watch. I could not believe my eyes. I'm glad you brought up the squib kick. I was going to bring that up, but you're right. If they do the squib kick and it doesn't get returned for a touchdown, you figure game over. But you're right. 13 seconds. You wouldn't imagine that would happen.
No. And, sorry, just a squib kick, because, there's a bunch of different thoughts there. Like a squib kick could have been fielded at the 35 and the guy takes a knee and the Bills lose 10 yards and no time runs off the clock, right? There's some gamble to squib kicking.
True.
So, you could argue that you could kick it to the 2 and make them return it, right? And then you guarantee to burn time. Now, if you're Sean McDermott, the coach, you probably think, hey, I trust my defense more than I trust my kicking game, right? I don't want to lose this game on a kickoff return for a touchdown. I'm sure that's the philosophy. But if that's your philosophy, then you have to have the right defensive calls. So I don't kill him necessarily for kicking it a touchback, right? And you say, hey, I'm going to trust my defense. All we got to do is not let him get 40 yards. But then you have to have the right situational game, situational defensive calls. And they did not have those.
Boy, it's tough to be a Browns fan with, what we've had to go through. But boy, the Bills fans, my goodness, right?
Oh my gosh. I mean, Tony Romo and Jim Nantz weren't even talking about the fact that the Chiefs could win the game, right? Like it was the Bills had won the game. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, hey, there's still 13 seconds, right? That shouldn't be enough time, but there is still 13 seconds. But everyone in Buffalo was celebrating, right? I mean, the thought is the game is over. Josh Allen just played the most unbelievable fourth quarter, and to have that snatched away, there's no way they're over it right now, right? I don't know when you get over that loss.
Brutal. All right, let's you ready to make pick for these two games?
Sure.
So I don't really have I usually pay more attention during the week. This has been a busy week at work, so I haven't really analyzed each game down to a T. So I'm gonna go with so help me out. Is there any major injury that is Debo's good to go, right? Do you know? Is there any major injury that I may have missed?
No, the last thing I saw was that the Chiefs think Tyrann Mathieu is going to play. He's still in concussion protocol, but he practiced, and that's big for them, right? Especially going against Burrow and that offense. You need Mathieu back there, so that's big. But I don't think there's another key guy. I think Trent Williams is supposed to play for the Niners. I think at left tackle. He was a little banged up with that ankle, but I think all the teams are pretty healthy.
All right, so we got Chiefs -7. I think it's pretty much been around there all week, and Rams -3.5. So that's kind of you're giving the home team that seems about right there. And the Niners have beaten them both times this year. Have they beaten them 6 times in a row or something like that?
Yes.
Yeah. So, and I will say this: I am not going to say now. While I think that the Rams Chiefs makes sense because you're going with the home teams and the favorites, right? I am definitely not going to say there's a guarantee this week after watching last week. it's hard. I would never go and put money on the Bengals straight up to win this game, right? I mean,
Right.
it's hard to imagine the Bengals going in there and winning in a playoff game, right? Because the Chiefs are rolling right now. I mean, I think most people would say, hey, the Chiefs are going to win the Super Bowl. They're the hottest team. They look like they're back, right?
Yeah.
But let's be honest, Scott, when we talk next week, I wouldn't sit here and say, I can't believe the Bengals won. I mean, don't count Burrow out. I mean, it could happen. I guess what I'm saying is, while I think the Chiefs are going to win the game, it's not a layup necessarily.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I mean, first of all, there's a chance for a letdown, right? I mean, I know it's to go to the Super Bowl, but the Chiefs played at such a high level to win that game. And it felt like a game that one for the ages, right? Instant classic, all that. So if they came out and had a bit of a letdown, maybe didn't score early or just had a hard time maybe getting up back to that emotional level that you need to play at, to me that feels possible, right? Not that they won't get there at some point, but if it takes them a while to get into it, I can see that. Also, we only have to go back to week 17 to see the Chiefs lose to the Bengals, right? They led, and then they only scored 3. They played great in the first half, had a big lead. That was the game that the Browns needed the Chiefs to win to keep their playoff hopes alive. And then the Bengals held the Chiefs to 3 points in the second half. Yeah, it was in Cincinnati. Yes, it wasn't for a trip to the Super Bowl, but it's no stretch to say that Joe Burrow in that Bengals offense can score a ton of points against the Chiefs, and that might be enough to win the game. So I'm with you. And I'll tell you this, I was surprised. I like to try to, okay, what's the line going to be? I had the line at 4.5, 5.5. I did not think it was going to open at 7 like it did.
Yeah, it's a good point. Which that's a huge line. I mean, but that's what makes it tough, because you're probably going to see a lot of people take the 7 points, because that's yeah. I mean, that's a massive amount of points in a playoff game. So, you want to go first, or you want me to go?
I can go. So let's do that game first. I think that's the first game.
Yeah, you can do that one first, and I'll do the NFC game first.
Okay. Yeah, you know what? I think the Chiefs win. I think they win because it's Patrick Mahomes and it's Kelsey and it's Hill and it's in Kansas City, and obviously they've proven they can go to the Super Bowl like they've done the last 2 years. But I think I would take the points. So I think Cincinnati can score. What you talk about those backdoor covers or whatever.
Yeah.
Do I think there's a chance that Kansas City could be up 17 and then the Bengals score 2 late touchdowns to make it a 3-point game or a 6-point game or whatever it is? Yeah, I think that can happen. I think Joe Burrow is going to continue to move the ball and score points as long as there's time on the clock. Now, the only caveat is if the Chiefs can pressure the heck out of him, and obviously Tennessee did that and held them to whatever it was, 16 or 19 points. That's a big concern. And the Chiefs have pass rush, and they have Chris Jones, and they have Frank Clark, and they have Melvin Ingram, who's been a huge addition and was in Josh Allen's face all day, although Josh Allen got away plenty of times. And Joe Burrow's got good pocket awareness, but he's not the athlete that Josh Allen is. So that concerns me. But for the reasons I mentioned earlier, for the fact that it's hard to go to a Super Bowl 3 straight years, I would take the points, but I think Kansas City wins a close one.
Yeah, I'm going to agree. I'm going to say Kansas City wins, and I'll take the points. Although it's the offensive line on the Bengals that is definitely a concern. Although Burrow has, he's overcome it. But I think the only thing that would surprise me a Bengals blowout would really surprise me. A Chiefs blowout would semi-surprise me. I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised though if the Chiefs cover. I mean, if they win by 14 or 10, that wouldn't shock me. But I'm gonna go with the points as well. And again, not shocked if the Bengals win, but I don't think it's gonna happen. But it certainly is out there, and I'll go with you and say Chiefs win, but I'll take the points. So on to the NFC game. The Rams are hot. There's no doubt about it. They are hot. They almost blow it, but still, Stafford's getting it done. But I just, I'm not taking both favorites. I'm taking the Niners to win. They beat them 6 times in a row. They've beaten them both times this year. So you would think that it would be the Rams are going to turn it and finally beat them. It's hard to beat a team 3 times in a year, but I'm definitely taking the points. I'm going to go upset because this is one of those stories. I think we saw the Steelers do it that one year where you go on the road and win 3 times. Yeah. Hey, I think the Niners are going to do it. Let's go Niners Chiefs Super Bowl.
Wow. All right. I could definitely see that. I think the coaching matchup is fantastic, right? 2 guys that used to work together, McVay and Shanahan, 2 of the smarter coaches in the league. I get everything you're saying. I'm going to pick the Rams, but I'm also concerned about the crowd because everybody in LA is like the players' wives are trying to tell people not to sell their tickets, but there's going to be a ton of 49ers fans. I saw something that they're expecting more 49ers fans than Rams fans, even though the game's in LA. So, that's got to be a boost to the Niners to see that, to go on the road and see your fans like that. But I think they're due. I think the Rams are due to break this streak against the Niners. I think you can only go back to week 18 and the Rams had a late lead that they blew, against the Niners, which means that, they know that they can take a lead. They know that they can control a game. Now, obviously it doesn't, quarterback matchup is not everything. And we saw that as clear as day in Green Bay a week ago. But I like Matthew Stafford more than Jimmy Garoppolo. I think Stafford's playing at a high level. He's playing with a lot of confidence.
You doubt the Garoppolo.
I do.
All the guy does is win.
Yeah. I know he doesn't win, but he didn't make a whole lot of plays. He didn't make a whole lot of plays in Green Bay, right?
Wow, but either did Aaron Rodgers. It was cool.
But I know. But
I'm just saying.
I know they scored like 6 points on offense. But I know, but he won the game, and there's a lot to like about him as a leader and as a guy. I just like Matthew Stafford better, and I think the Rams are better. Not that the 49ers aren't talented, right? They have a good defensive line. They have Kittle. They have Debo. They have Trent Williams. But it's and maybe it's a collection of stars, but you look across that Rams and it's Donald and it's Von Miller and it's Jalen Ramsey and it's Kupp and it's OBJ. Like they got a bunch of guys, Akers. They got a bunch of players on that Rams team. So I'm going to take the Rams. I'm going to take them to cover. And I think we have, Rams Chiefs, which should be a good game. Should be a really good game.
Yeah, I just don't want an LA team in the Super Bowl.
Yeah. I think it'd be another home game, right? It's back to back in Sophie. We had nobody had ever done it. We had Tampa last year, and it would be the Rams again this year. So I wouldn't be stunned if the Niners won, but I do think the Rams. I think the Rams are a better team. Now, if the Niners can run it for 220 yards, then they got a real good chance to win a game, right? You control the pass rush of Miller and Donald. You take the ball out of Stafford's hands, like. That's their recipe, and we've seen it time and time again. And maybe teams that play each other so often, right? Division rivals. Sometimes you see a lot of ugly games, and if it's 17-14, that certainly suits the 49ers, and it suits if you're getting 3.5. But I like the Rams in this game.
All right, that's it for me. I gotta go.
Chud, I appreciate the time. I don't know if we'll do this next week, but we'll definitely check in before the Super Bowl and give our Super Bowl picks. Thank you for your time, Chud. Good luck on the hockey good luck on the ice for the hockey shootout.
Thank you.
And everybody, thanks again for listening. This has been another episode of the Brown Zone Coverage Podcast, and you can read all my work at brownzone.com. Thanks a lot.